Welcome to Daily Plunge. We are in the book of Leviticus, chapter 16, verses 20 through 34. Now, this chapter continues in talking about the work that is done for the people of God on the Day of Atonement, right? Otherwise known as Yom Kippur. And this is the most important day in their calendar, right? And that's still true today. And it begins, it began with the cleansing of Aaron himself and then the tabernacle, but now comes the scapegoat, right? And the priest, Aaron, lays his hands, puts pressure upon the head of this animal so that in a sense, the identity of God's people is being conferred upon this animal. And in that moment, he confesses, and it says, all the sins and wickedness and rebellion of God's people, right? And you think about what a long, wicked list this is. And even just for each one of us, how long that list is after a whole year, right? All of their sins, it says, is transferred onto this animal so that in that time, in that moment, it becomes a substitute for these sinners. And for us, this has been done in Jesus Christ. Our atonement happened with him. He became the Paschal Lamb in which we confess our sins over him, and he is our substitute. Now this animal is led out into the wilderness and released, and its sins just sort of wander off with him, with that animal. And what God proclaims is then everyone who's touched any of these sacrifices, they have to cleanse themselves because the sin is so toxic with each one of these offerings, these sacrifices, that they have to cleanse themselves to be ritually pure again, ritually clean. And he goes on to say in verse 30 that this is all done, this Day of Atonement is made for you. This Day of Atonement is not about for the Lord. These sacrifices aren't for God. These sacrifices are given by God to the people so that they may be forgiven of all their sin and stubbornness and rebellion, their idolatry, so that they can be cleansed, so that they are pure of heart with the Lord, right? And that they may be accepted as his people. And that's what it says in verse 30. And for us as Christians, our Day of Atonement happened on Good Friday when Jesus Christ took on our sins, right? So that we may be forgiven, that we may be cleansed of our sins and made pure by his blood and accepted as the children of God. And as he descended into death and into hell, our sins were released there and we were released from them. And why is this, this blood sacrifice effective? And that comes in verse 11 of chapter 17. In that he says the blood is the life of the flesh. The life of a being is in the blood. And I have given it its life. And now I'm giving this life to you that you put on the altar. And this altar part is really because otherwise it's just butchery, right? You're just cutting up some meat. But it's when it touches the altar that it becomes holy. So too for us, it is when the words of institution are said over the bread and the wine that they become the real presence of Christ for us. And in that contact with the holy is what gives us that atonement for our sins. Well, thanks, friends. Have a blessed day.